What's going on, ladies and gents, and welcome back to a brand new hot and fresh spicy chicken quesadilla. Today we're going to be talking about two things. Big data databases and messaging services. And this is the last video for databases. I promise you, this is the last one. It's just one of those things we had to get out there, okay? So when you have a lot of data and you need to be able to search and report on it, you want to look at a big data store. One of the most popular services AWS has to offer is called Redshift. Now, before we actually get into big data, there are some terms that we need to look out first. So the first term being data lake. Now, a data lake is like a box of books at a thrift store or in a garage sale. It's just a place where you stash a huge amount of data and you don't have it sorted or really organized in any particular way. In AWS, this is usually gigabytes of text files and stashed into an S3 bucket. And it could be logs of your web application, web servers, or raw telemetry data, or logs of your user events within your app. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a lot of things. On the other hand, a data warehouse is organized. It's a fixed data type, and it's usually stored in a relational database. It's not a mound of books that you can find on the floor. It's a library. It's a well-organized bookshelf, and everything is labeled and alphabetized. For large amounts of data going into the database or into the data warehouse, we use Redshift. Underneath the hood of Redshift is a heavily modified cluster of Postgres servers. So if you got too much data that a regular Postgres server would just slow down to a halt when you try to run a query, you'll want to use Redshift instead. Now, there is a talk in YouTube about the deep dive on Amazon Redshift, and I would highly recommend watching this. Even though it's 51 minutes, I would highly recommend watching this if you're leaning towards the Redshift route. Also, there is documentations on Redshift, and if you're going to look at the docs, I would suggest you look at Tooting Table Design. It's a great documentation to start off your Redshift journey. But if you're already using Hadoop or Apache Spark, Amazon has a service called EMR. Now, EMR is like RDS or Elastic Cache for these data stores, in that it makes it easy for you to manage the server that runs your big data cluster. If you have a bunch of text files in an S3 bucket, which is a data lake, and you need to run some queries against that data, you should look at Athena. Anyways, I gave you three services that AWS offers for big data. Now we're going to get into messaging services. Now, when new data needs to be written into your database engine may place a lock or a hold on the table that you're trying to write to. And this is going to prevent other users from reading from that table until you're done writing your new data. Now, when you have a lot of data streaming into your database, this wait time on reading from the tables can really slow down your application. A queue can temporarily store the data that you need to write, so that a spike in incoming data doesn't cause your database to melt down. This means that your application users aren't sitting around and waiting on your database, so they could actually move on and keep using the rest of your app, and their data will be written later. This is just one of the cases for a queue, and there's several other use cases, such as creating a messaging framework to help the components of your app talk to each other without relying on a database for this. In AWS, there's actually two types of services that help you do the messaging or creating a queue, and those are Kinesis and SQS, or Simple Queue Service. Kinesis is able to handle a large stream of incoming data, such as real-time data and what your users are clicking on in your web application, or streaming of real-time application logs from your servers. It's also able to connect to other services to do real-time reporting on these large data streams. SQS is actually more popular, and it's simpler to use, hence the name Simple Queue Service. But it can get extremely expensive if you're sending it lots and lots of events, which is one of the reasons there's Kinesis. SNS, or Simple Notification Service, can be used to push out a message such as an email or text message or a HTTP call to a webhook. So when your SQS queue is finished generating the report that some people are waiting on, SNS can send them an email or a text message letting them know that they can log back in and download their report. All the messaging services work a bit differently, so it's important to understand when to use the right tools for the right job. The question isn't how should I use or how should I choose between Kinesis or SQS or SNS. It's not. You're not choosing between cereal boxes at a grocery store. No, the real question is, when should I use Kinesis or SQS or SNS? It's because you might use Kinesis to buffer your incoming data, but then also use SQS at the same time from one of your Kinesis workers to kick off a separate workflow when only certain events come into your Kinesis stream. If Kinesis is a nail gun, then SQS is a hammer. And you wouldn't use a nail gun to hang a picture. But if you're replacing a roof, you want to use both tools. So anyways, that's it for this video, guys. It was pretty quick and simple. I didn't want to get too much in depth. I hope you enjoyed. This is the last video for databases, like I said, and I hope you enjoyed it. So we've been over RDS, relational database services, NoSQL databases, in-memory caches. Now we're talking about big data and messaging services. And that's basically everything there is to know about for database as a service, or DBaaS. So next video, we're going to move on to platform as a service, PaaS. So I hope you stay tuned for that. We still got a little bit more videos to come up. I'm thinking about doing another series, and at the same time doing this series as well, because I don't think a lot of people want to get this. I'm not too sure. Leave a comment on what you feel about that. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.